Hi, and welcome to another episode of Nursing Your Way to Wealth, where a mental health nurse and an accountant talk about wealth creation, personal development, and financial independence in the UK to help you live the life you deserve. Hello, and welcome back to Nursing Your Way to Wealth. This is episode 3, where we aim to help 1 million people improve their finances. I'm here with Alex, he's our financial resident expert, and today we're going to discuss income, how we earn it, how we make money, and how to track our net worth. Alex has a good segment on this in his book, so I'm going to pass to him to do a brief overview of what that is.
Thanks, Alex, and hi, everybody. So, income, the big topic, and something that everybody is keen to earn more of and understand more of. And today, what I'm hoping we can do is just talk through income, the different ways that you can earn it, how that it links in with net worth, and why it's important to track your net worth. But on income, just to kick off, so you're probably familiar with your income from your employer pays you a salary, and that is what we call active income, so where you are having to ultimately trade your time for that money. But what I'd like to talk about as well today is looking at income in a slightly different way of passive income. So what can you do, how can you earn money where you don't have to necessarily be trading your time for that money? And that could mean an upfront investment of time, which will then provide you with income and residual income going forward without a lot of additional time and effort. So, for example, if you invest your money, you can, once you start investing and build up a nice nest egg that can provide passive income for you in the future. You could be working on projects such as, for example, I wrote a book. That was a huge amount of time investment, but that investment is now, I know that provides me income every month from the good people at Amazon Kindle Direct Publishing. You can, and so looking at ways and almost starting to look at your income from what am I having to trade my time for directly, and where can I detach my time from earning potential is a really important topic, and one where once you understand this and start to look at your income that way, and where you're not having to trade your time all the time, your income can actually exponentially grow because there's only so much work an individual can do. There's only so much time in a day. It's about detaching yourself from your earning power and starting to increase your income um, through through that. And why this is important when it comes through to net worth tracking, and well, for your net worth, is your income is your biggest, I call it your wealth building tool. So it's the one thing that is going to, once that money comes into you, it's up to you to decide what to do with it. And ideally, you should be putting that towards kind of wealth building activities. So that is things such as buying assets. So that's buying your house, investing. It could be buying a rental property, or conversely, you could be on the flip side and accruing liabilities, buying things which are going down in value, having you know needlessly spending on nights out and going to the pub all the time, and therefore your income, no matter how big it is, you're not going to be contributing positively to your net worth. So it's a really big topic in finance and well in personal finance, and I think once you start to fully understand income and net worth and how they interlink with each other, you start to see building wealth and um, as more of a game, and it's quite enjoyable and very motivating as you start seeing both going in the same direction. And so I think today we've got plenty to talk about with regards to helping improve income and increase it, and different ways of doing that, and also just some practicalities on how to start tracking your net worth and why that's important.
Yeah, so I think you raise a number of good points there, quite pertinent ones. I think that the distinction really that changed my thinking around earning and certainly my earning potential was two things. One, when you first start managing your money, you think it's a race to the bottom and cutting expenses will make you wealthy. That there's only so much expense cutting people can do, or people are willing to do. I could probably wash up all my things by hand and not use a dishwasher to save, I don't know, a few pounds a month, maybe some money per year. I'm in no way willing to do that. I'd rather bung it all in the dishwasher. It's by far my favourite kitchen appliance, and I think that's something that can only go so far. Whereas how much you can earn, there is no ceiling to that. There, and with that, you can either sell your time and earn per hour. So, for example, I earn a salary, but I'm paid per hour of the time that I work because I don't own or run a business or operate a service like that. And the other option is owning something like that. So, for example, I can go to work for 10 hours a day and earn, well, no, £40 an hour, for example, which would make me £400 minus all of my other costs and taxes, etc. At the same time, and I've been thinking about this recently, I could, I don't know, sell coffee from a coffee stand somewhere and earn £1,000 in a day, but it still takes me that time. Whereas if I owned the coffee stand, paid someone else to run it, and just took some of the money off that, it's more of a passive thing, and I'm not then directly trading my time for money. But we're going to cover a bit more on both of those with examples of each. I mean, Alex, what do you think about how people think about their income? I know a lot of people think it's just tied to one particular job. Other people talk about having multiple income streams. I've read a lot about most people who are filthy rich or have more than one income stream, up to about seven.
Yeah, I think it's the average millionaire has got 7 income streams, and it's important to diversify your income streams, not just because it helps you build wealth, but if you think of the last, you know, 3 4 years when we went through the COVID pandemic, just how people reliant on one source of income, which is the vast majority of people, how fragile it is when suddenly there's a pandemic and the government's having to support people in work because without there's that it's only one source of income from their employer. And I think people should start to really think about building up second sources of income. And it sounds quite intimidating at first, and it's something that it takes a long time to do. You're not just going to suddenly be able to replace your employer's salary overnight. It's something that takes a lot of time, but by building on second income streams, and these are things, whether it's earning rental income, whether that's through dividends from investing or capital gains through investing, whether it's affiliate marketing, whether it's royalties or interest even on cash, over time you start to build up that second income stream, to be less reliant on that sole source, which is really, really important.
Yeah, I think at the same time you listed a few things there, and the one thing that popped into my head that you didn't say is creating things, like making something and seeing if there's a market for it. I mean, people will pay for quality items and sometimes like novelty items as well. So if for example, if you enjoy any form of hobby, whether it's woodwork, metalwork, I don't know, car mechanics, sewing, knitting, who knows? I mean, I've heard of local younger people to me here buying a steam cleaner and just offering to clean carpets, cars, anything. And there's another local chap who's, don't think he's even out of school yet, who does gardening, mowing grass here. And he's literally inundated with work, and he's 15, 16, and he's earning hundreds of pounds a week from pushing a mower around, and he loves it. So there's always time and opportunity to earn money. And I think if you can solve a problem for someone or remove a pain point for someone, I think there's definitely money to be made in it.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's all about uh, adding value, and also, yeah, when you mention or say or start a business, it doesn't necessarily need you don't need to be starting Apple or Microsoft, mowing lawns or steam cleaning carpets and cars. they're great examples, and there's a lot of demand for them. Dog walking is another massive, huge market and opportunity. Certainly to where I live, there's no end of dog walking vans going up and down the streets. So if you're winning, there's tons of opportunities out there to be earning extra income, which you can do very quickly. You just put some ads in the paper, and as long as you've got the right equipment and the time to do it, yeah, there's some great opportunities to start improving your income.
Yeah, it just made me laugh. You just said ads in the paper, which is suggesting that we're probably older than we sound. But just an example, the local person here who mows lawns does all of his advertising for the local Facebook page for this area, and he puts before and after photos on, and there's obviously pictures of him like actually mowing the grass. I think his parents help out a bit, but he's doing all the graft and all the work, and it's been going a couple of years now, and he's getting to the point, I think, where he's having to not do the work because he's got too much on, which actually is a real testament to. In the beginning, he was maybe doing 2 lawns a week, and now he could do 3, 4 a day in the peak times. And it's just grown slowly, slowly, but little by little. If you consistently show up and you do a good job, you provide a good service, people will come back to it. So even the thing that you think actually isn't going to make any money, or you're not going to try because it sounds difficult, or you're not going to make loads of money overnight, it's about putting the time in early and building a reputation, building confidence in people. And you never know, it could go a long, long way, but you won't know until you start.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's absolutely no risk in trying and giving it a go. Um, and that's definitely something I'd encourage anybody that's keen on increasing their income or have a bit of entrepreneurial streak in them, is just to try it, because the entry costs are so low. Worst case is you've I say wasted time, but actually you won't have wasted time. You'll have learned some advertising, you'll have learned how to sell your products, you'll have learned the local market, a bit about finance. So it's only positives that you get from these experiences. And you know it said successful entrepreneurs take, they have, I think it's an average about 7 or 8 failures before a big success. So it's a learning process, and it's only making you more valuable in terms of your personal, what your attributes are. So yeah, get out there and give it a go.
Yeah, I think definitely I would agree. I mean, in terms of, we've covered a bit on kind of side hustles, extra ideas you can do to increase kind of your income. For the people who work what we're going to call, or I'm going to call, regular 9 to 5 jobs, careers type like that, they obviously are sold to one profession. For example, like mine is obviously nursing, yours is accountancy and numbers. Obviously, you have your side thing of book sales as well, and any mentoring or coaching that you do. But for example, say someone's working and they've been working the same job for 5 plus years, which is a bit new in our kind of era. People usually job hop quite a lot for extra salary. But if they're happy with staying there and they feel that they're underpaid or perhaps they need to earn more money, those conversations with employers, they're kind of a little bit unbalanced. They feel a lot of the power's in the employer's pocket with that. So, how would you negotiate perhaps a salary increase from your employer, thinking about value, what other people are paid in your field? Because I've one example or 2 examples where I've done that myself. I just wondered if you had any thoughts on it as well.
Yeah, and it's a really important question, because most people's largest income stream is from an employer, and asking for more asking for more money from your employer is a very nerve-wracking, and it takes a courageous conversation in order to do that. But I think there's definitely ways. It's definitely something that you should be talking about. There's a few ways in which I'd approach it. So one is do a bit of research, maybe talk to some recruiters just to understand the types of salary that are available in the marketplace, just so you've got a good gauge of that. But then it's talking to your employer about being open and honest with them on, you like the company, you want to stay, you've you notice there are higher salaries elsewhere, but rather than approaching it as if you don't pay me X and I'm going to leave, approaching it as I'd like to earn X salary with my current responsibilities. Are there any other responsibilities or roles or anything else I can do to help me get to that salary with you as an employer? And so you're then approaching the conversation as you're almost business partners, as opposed to, well, these pay me more, so therefore if you don't, then I'm leaving, and it's quite a threatening conversation. But approaching it that way and being open and honest with them, I think is a respectful conversation. They're not on the back foot. They see that you want to grow with the company, and you giving them a number and it almost help me get there. I think is a way that I would approach going for a pay rise conversation.
Yeah, it sounds conducive, not combative. So if someone comes in and says, if you don't pay me 80 grand a year, I'm leaving, that's very, very different to, I'd like to be earning £80,000. I believe I can do it with you and with this company. How can we make sure I'm providing that much value so you can afford to pay me that? Those two are very, very different. One of them I think will get you a long way, and the other one will probably get you not looked at, glossed over for promotions, perhaps, because they're going to think you've already got one foot out the door. I think understanding what you're worth and what your value is to the field and to society is very helpful. If you feel like you need to do some additional training, then of course that can be done. I mean, there were days when I wasn't a nurse. There's days that Alex had not been an accountant. So we've obviously trained in those fields. You can't just turn up and say, "Oh, I'm going to do nursing now." And my own examples of negotiating salary and increasing my general income is one is doing nursing. I've doubled my income from doing that. Most people know how much nurses get paid. It's not, in my opinion, it's not very much. But the ability to go from £18,000 a year to 36, I managed that within 3-4 years tops. So it is doable, and that difference in money made a huge difference to me and enabled me to have some disposable income. And then I learned about investing, and now I'm here. So it's made a big difference in how I think. In terms of the negotiating thing, if you're already working for an employer, we've covered that, and Alex has articulated it really well. When you're going for a new job, and there's, for example, the salary ranges for say between 30 and £40,000 or something, just to make the numbers easier. There's no downside into saying, look, I have this much experience in the field. I've worked here before. This is the bits I understand. Therefore, I think I'm worth 33, 35,000, £38,000 to you. The worst they can say is no. I think if you don't ask, you don't get. But on 2 occasions within nursing, I've asked for more than the minimum salary band that they're offering, and both times they've just said yes. One of them took 2 weeks to come back to me and said yes. The other one took about 5 minutes. The first one netted me an extra £6,000 a year, and the more recent one netted me an extra two. And I think that's only happened just because I asked for it. And if you think about it, it's not just the extra money in your pocket every month, it's the extra pension contributions, the extra holiday pay, the extra sick pay you might get. So, and if you calculate that over a long-ish career, starting a couple of rungs up the ladder can only be beneficial for your long-term finances.
Yeah, that's some really good examples and really powerful. And I think there's a couple of things which I took from that. One is you mentioned often about value. Is that what is your value to the employer? And that is a running theme, not just in employment, but also in in business. It's how much value are you giving and how much is that value worth? So people will buy value, they don't buy time. The more value you can deliver to your employer or to your client, the more money you're going to be earning. And also it's that the point of there's no harm in asking for these things. Nobody's going to say for a pay rise, sorry, nobody's going to, you're not going to be sat at your desk randomly and your boss comes over and says, oh, by the way, here's an extra £2,000 just because. It's you've got to be the one on the front foot and being proactive and have your being aware of what value you're giving. And one thing I do is whenever I've had positive contributions to at work, I just keep a log of these. So I just have a Word document which has just got, I did this project, this was the impact, this was the good feedback, and like copying and pasting emails from stakeholders and noting all those down, because when it comes to, when it's the appraisal period, or you're looking to if you wanted to have one of those conversations about increasing your pay, you've almost got this bank of, well, here is the value that I've delivered so far, and how do I then continue giving you that value in order to get to the salary that I desire.
That sounds incredible, actually. You're collating evidence as to why you are worth more than you're being paid. And actually, come appraisal time, most people have annual reviews, or perhaps if you ask them 6 monthly, something like that. If you can say, here's all the documented value that I've brought to you, to your company, to your team, whatever, providing that evidence means there's very little that someone can say, well, actually, you haven't provided this, therefore I'm not going to do it, because they're being presented with effectively a list of feedback from people and a list of value that you've created. I very much doubt any employer is going to counteract that and produce a list of where things haven't gone perfectly. It tells your employer as well that you are on the ball with that, your fingers on the pulse, and you can provide this information. So I think they'll take any conversations like that perhaps a bit more seriously. And in doing some research, Alex, for this, and I wondered your thoughts on it. I came across a study about negotiating salary, and actually, men are much more likely to ask for a salary bump than ladies, especially considering a female would have to think, I'm 95% meeting all of these criteria, therefore I should ask for a pay rise. And yet the study suggested that a man would ask for a pay rise if it's something that they're meeting something like 60% rather than the 90 something percent, which I thought was a huge disparity. And I wonder if that's got anything to do with the pay gaps that we've seen over the last few decades.
Yeah, that is a fascinating stat, actually. I've not heard that before, but I think there's a tendency for women to be is less confident in the workplace and be more, yeah, almost having to be so certain that they're due something that essentially all they have to do is ask, and they'll know that there's very little risk of that not coming off. Whereas I think men tend to be a bit more bullish in the workplace and can, I think I've saw something similar about if you're wanting to apply for a job, if men meet like half of the criteria, then they're like, oh yeah, cool, I'll apply for that. And similarly for females, it was much higher percentage of that job spec that led them to it. So I'm not surprised actually, now you mention it, that does contribute quite a bit to the earnings gap. And it can only be a positive thing that companies are starting to report on the gender pay gap, and hopefully that will start to reduce it.
Yeah, I agree, and absolutely, I would say if you do think you're undervalued, do have that conversation. Begin to have that. Be a bit more proactive with it, because as Alex said, you don't get 2 grand handed out to you or any pay rise just by sitting at your desk. You might probably are worth more than you're going to get paid. Employers, I think, as a collective, will pay its employees the least amount possible, because the more money they have spare, the more money they can give in dividends and shareholders, and generally their stock price and therefore company value goes up. So any company, and I would include the NHS in this, will pay people the absolute minimum they can get away with that's tolerable for people. And that always comes with working for somebody else. If you work for yourself, you can obviously pay yourself as much as you can afford. A lot of people get this a bit confused. When people work self-employed, they don't often create a business that's sellable. They create themselves a job without holiday pay, without sick pay. If you're self-employed, perhaps in a trade or something, if you don't work, you're not going to get paid. Whereas if you're creating a business that's sellable, you could potentially have a big payday when you sell out of that. So if you are thinking you're working as a self-employed person, sole trader, whatever, think about how you can morph that into a sellable business rather than just giving yourself what often can be a really stressful, difficult job.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point you make, just on just so self-employment definitely isn't for everyone. And I think it's about detaching yourself from that business. And as you I think quite rightly just said, quite often people will create themselves a job and not a business. And it's that distinction where you have to start thinking about, once you grow that company and you want to grow it, it has to be able to operate without you being there. And so that is by, leveraging other people's time. It's having good systems and processes in place so you're not the focal point. And if you are sick, if you want to take a little holiday or whatever, the business doesn't fall down. And that's a really important distinction, separating yourself. And this is where income and net worth can grow exponentially, and where some of the richest people in the world have got their money from is from creating businesses which have their systems and their processes. They are not jobs that they've created for themselves.
Yeah, I think you're right. As well, that systems and processes reminds me of DeMarco's book, The Millionaire Fastlane, where he talks about helping. If you help and impact millions of people, you'll get paid a lot of money. Whereas if you impact 10 people, you won't get paid anywhere near as much. I just had another thought on increasing the value you get from your employer. We've talked a lot about salary and being paid more. If that's a hard and fast no from your employer, you could ask them for an additional pension contribution. You could ask to work from home a few days a week. You could ask for flexible hours, or just something that would help you fulfill your job and that fits into your lifestyle, rather than directly, here's some extra money in your pocket every month. I mean, even a 1% employer contribution extra to your pension is going to make tens of thousands of pounds difference over your lifetime, and it could be a huge difference between what you can afford in retirement and not. I mean, you could be driving a Maserati instead of a Micra because of that one decision you've made, or that one question you asked 40 years ago. It can The compounding there is inevitable and incredibly value creating for yourself.
Really, really good points actually. And you say, especially on the pension contributions, and I think on that, the point of, are there other things that your employer can do to benefit you without, if they don't give you an extra increase in income in salary, is looking at your profitability of employment, and you know missing out your commute a couple of days a week because you've got flexi time, although, and that you say costs you £20 a day or £10 a day to travel in to your job. That, a couple of days a week, you're looking at £80 a month. That's actually an equivalent, the increase in your salary, probably about £120 a month, so just over, £1,500 a year. So little things like that can actually make, although you don't see it in the top line in terms of your income, you do see it of how much cash you get from your employment at the end of the month.
I agree. So it's changes that aren't so obvious that can really help as well, and generally helping you feel better. If you're not going in all the time, you might feel better about your work life balance and can stick with it a little bit longer, prevent some burnout, which is always good. So I think we've covered income, someone negotiating. We might come back to negotiating salaries and things in another future episode. I just wanted to focus a bit on the other half of the show, because we're at half an hour point at the minute. So calculating and tracking net worth, this is more of a you thing than a me thing. So why is it important, and how do you track your net worth?
Net worth is almost a bit of a business terminology, really. It's how much, if you were to take all of your assets, so everything that you own, and remove and deduct from that everything that you owe, what is that number and what's your net worth? And it, the it's an important number, certainly in personal finance, and it's not a game of who's got the most or who's got the highest. It's a measure of how are your financial decisions day to day impacting your wealth. And the higher that wealth number, the higher your net worth number, the more flexibility and freedom that you have in your life. And so just going back to what are assets and what are the liabilities and things that you owe. So assets cover things such as is your house, it could be a rental property that you have, it could be pensions and investments, it could be your cars, any expensive jewelry, technology that you've got. And if you were to sell absolutely everything that you have, how much would you have? And those are the things that you have on your assets. And then on the liabilities, or the things that you owe, is things like your mortgage on your house or the mortgage on a rental property. Is it credit cards that you've got? Have you got student loan? Have you got um, store cards? Are you paying off for a holiday? Anything that is taking money out of your bank account is a liability. And the game with personal finance is to use your income. So it's to maximize your income, minimize your expenses. So you have what I like to call a wealth building fund. And the higher that wealth building fund, you then put that towards increasing your assets and decreasing your liabilities. And if you are, and for me, it's important to track this net worth number. And I personally track it every month. And if you see that number increasing, you know that you're doing the right, you're making the right financial decisions.
Yeah, just two things with that. Firstly, I've heard people track their net worth on literally a piece of graph paper, and they can see the amounts kind of go up over a number of years if they're doing it monthly. Second, just a thought on your assets versus liabilities thing. I've always understood it, and correct me if I'm wrong or mistaken somehow, that an asset is something that produces you money, that puts money in your pocket, and a liability is something that takes money out of your pocket. So, for example, you say house and car. Those I think can be both ways. So if you rent rooms from your house, it can put money into your pocket. It also takes money away from you because you're obviously paying the upkeep, maintenance, bills, etc. And the same thing with cars. If you own it outright, I would call it an asset, I think, but it also takes money out of your pocket for MOT, maintenance, fuel, etc. But it gives you an element of freedom and travel. But if you have a car on finance, it's then definitely taking money out of your pocket. So I think there's room for those on both sides. The one thing that firmly sits in the asset column is your income and your ability to earn money, which, as you've said before, is going to be your greatest wealth building asset. Is you, the person, and the income you can make. So when you do you have lists of that, and how do you differentiate the two?
Yeah, so it's some good points. So I think the assets put money in your pocket and liabilities take money out of your pocket is a kind of good way to. I think that's from Rich Dad Poor Dad from Robert Kiyosaki.
Correct.
Uh, yeah, and the so for me, looking at net worth and from assets and liabilities, almost from like an accounting standpoint, as if you're treating yourself as a company. So I'd be like Alex Fenn Limited. What things do I own and what do I owe? It's a houses is an interesting one, and I know that it's ultimately you still have equity within your house, which is an asset. I think where you can help reduce the maintenance and expenses related to that, anything, whether that's your house or car or anything, to reduce the expenses to that is a good thing. But for me, I would still classify, a a house as an asset, even though it may not necessarily put money into your pocket. If you were to sell your house, you sell your house, pay off the mortgage, and you've got £100,000. That's £100,000 of your money ultimately. I think where Robert Kiyosaki's point is, it's not helping you. There's other ways to help you build wealth, and by investing heavily in properties where they have a positive cash flow as an asset. I think with like on the car point, it's always a hotly like debated topic is cars. My view is cars they're massively depreciating assets, and you should invest the minimum amount in a car as you can. I prefer to always own my cars outright. I don't like the idea of having a £500-600 a month car payment at 7% interest hanging over me. But cars are it's probably a topic in itself because it's a very public display of wealth and status is a car, which is why a lot of people tend to, you see a lot of fancy cars with brand new number plates on them on the roads. But for me, you could ultimately still sell a vehicle and get some money from it. If you have outstanding loans or credit on the car, it's the net amount of that which would be ultimately your asset. I can't imagine actually there's much equity within any lease cars or rental cars, also like PCP, personal contract plan cars. Um, but yeah, so for me, I always look at it's I approach this from very much an accounting standpoint, treating applying accounting principles to a personal finance, and it's almost pretending I am a company and how I would record my financial statements if I was as a business, which is where I kind of come from when it comes to net worth. But your point on you as an individual being your own biggest asset and wealth building, the ability to build wealth yourself and build income, investing in yourself is always the best investment, and you are your biggest asset when it comes to that.
I think I'm similar to you on the car thing. I've always owned all the cars I've bought outright. They've always been relatively cheap. I think the most I've ever paid for a car is it's like 2,500, something like that. And I learned to do a bit of maintenance myself, so I don't have to pay a mechanic, things like that. But then again, it takes a bit of my time up. In terms of just one more thing on the cars, and then we'll swap to tips on tracking net worth and things. If if you're happy with the monthly payment and you can easily afford it and you value having a newish car, if those are things that you get value from, then by all means do it. We're not saying don't do it, but be aware of how much it's costing you. Don't just pick the lowest figure on the sheet that the salesman gives you, because arguably that'll be the one that means you pay the most over the long term. Fully understand the interest rate, the length of the loan that you're getting. It's basically a bank loan with a car attached. Make sure you understand how much that's realistically going to cost you, how much equity, if any, you'll have at the end to put into a next car. And I think people get stuck on this thing of having a new car every 3 years, and it's quite hard to break out of once you're in it. So go in with an open mind and make the right decision for you, and don't feel any pressure. They're pretty good at adding pressure to get you to buy things. So, and having a shiny car probably sells itself if you're of that disposition. So, Alex, in terms of, we've talked calculating net worth, we talked about incomes, negotiating salaries and things. In terms of tracking net worth, is this something? Is it a pen and paper thing? Is it a spreadsheet thing? Do you use an app or a service to help manage it? I know I've used an app or a web service myself before, but I'm curious in how you do it, because I'm sure yours is much more efficient than mine.
For me, it depends on it's completely personal on what works for you. I personally have just I've got an Excel spreadsheet that I use, and I just have a list of um, my all my accounts or my investment accounts, my pensions. I've got a house equity on there. I don't have any credit card debt, but I've got a line for it. And it just adds that up. And every month I do a quick check of the value of those, insert it onto the spreadsheet, and I have one column for every month. And I've been tracking this for probably about 3 or 4 years now, so it's getting to be quite a cumbersome model. And and then that links into a graph, and I just kind of can monitor how that moves month to month. I've seen also, and I've read about people who do it on pen and paper or a piece of graph paper, like you mentioned, and that's really effective as well. As you start tracking it, you will notice over time it starts to build and it starts to increase, and it's really motivating to see that. However, you do it is really up to you, and that trial and error is there could be some apps. There's an app which I've also used called Topia, which is Topia, which was founded by a couple of guys. One of them was Grant Sabatier, who wrote the book on financial freedom. He's a guy who retired within 5 years with over $1 million from starting with nothing. So, a really inspirational guy. And that is very much dedicated to those that are wanting to retire early, but it's also a very good app to use.
I didn't know you were going to mention Topia. That didn't come up as in our pre-episode chat. The other chap who runs that is a man called Logan Leckie. He's a Scotsman. who I would describe as a serial entrepreneur. He's very, very business focused, and I've actually been to a couple of seminars that he's publicly put out via the Topia newsletter. We're not affiliated in any way whatsoever. I'd like to be, but his newsletter is definitely worth a read. And what he's built is basically a financial independence monitoring app, amongst other things. And it's actually really, really good. I've also used it myself in the past. So quick plug for that. And your spreadsheet that you've been kind of monitoring or managing for a bit, have you seen a positive correlation over time? Do all signs point upwards for you because you're monitoring it and you're able to change things? You're able to notice where things need perhaps some adjustment?
Yes. So I should say month to month there can be fluctuations depending on what the stock market is doing. A lot of my money is invested, and as we know, the stock markets can be quite volatile. But certainly, as I look over, 12 to 24-month periods, the trajectory is definitely up. And I think what tracking it does is make you very conscious about the interrelation between your net income and how much money you take home after all your expenses and what you do with that extra money. And the more that you put towards these wealth building activities, whether that's investing, overpaying your mortgage, clearing down debts, that net worth goes up. And that correlation and being really cognizant of that has really helped my net worth grow.
Yeah, I think the key word for that is intentional. What are you doing with the spare money you've earned? Are you spending it on something a bit frivolous? Is it a wealth building activity? One will get you much richer, one obviously won't. So if you have got any spare money, do think about what avenue, what pathway you're going to go down with it. Alex, I think in the future we might think about putting up some kind of basic income net worth tracking spreadsheet. Perhaps we could knock something up between us and offer it, something like that, just to get people started, because I know Excel is not a thing for most people. I know a bit about it, but probably nowhere near as much as you. Is there anything else in terms of income net worth tracking you wanted to mention, or are we going to wrap it here?
Yeah, I think putting a template up is a really good idea. I think, to be honest, no, I think we've covered a decent amount there, and hopefully people have got some ideas on how to increase income, the different types of income, how to go about tracking your net worth, why it's important, and it's about being intentional, and it's about making sure that you're adding value to either your clients or to your employer, and that your pay and your income is ultimately linked to that value. So no, I think we've had a good session there. There's been a lot of stuff to cover.
Yeah, agreed. And if you have a success story that you have negotiated an extra salary, or you just have some feedback for us, whether it's positive, negative, we'll take all of it. You guys could email us. I've recently set up an email address for this, which is just nursingyourwaytowealth@gmail.com. I'll also put that below in the show notes as well. But I would be interested to hear any feedback from anyone. So, Alex, I think we're done. We'll see you next time. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
None of what we discuss on the show is to be considered financial or health advice, and we recommend you always do your own research or consult an independent financial advisor or a doctor when making your financial or health decisions.